Good evening and welcome to Coloradan Conversations. Thanks for coming tonight. I'm Maria Kuntz. I'm the editor of the Coloradan Alumni magazine and a director of communications and university advancement. I'm really thrilled to be hosting this event with some remarkable CU Boulder experts. And thank you for taking time to be here physically and online. It takes dedication and commitment to take time out of our busy lives to find a space at home or to make your way down to campus and to show up and be in community with other buffs and other community members, so thank you. For our virtual audience, I want to mention that courtesy of artificial intelligence, there is closed captioning. So if you'd like to access the captions, please click on the CC button on the right-hand side in the bottom toolbar of your Zoom window. And if the captions aren't great, we can dig into that maybe tonight. I can't be responsible for Zoom's captioning. But this evening, we're embarking on a journey into AI, and we're exploring research and applications with experts from across the CU Boulder campus. One central question that we're exploring is, can we trust AI? So as we listen to the perspectives from the various disciplines and delve into the ethical implications that emerge, we'll aim to move a little bit closer to that answer. Before going any further, I'd like to read the CU Boulder land acknowledgement, and I invite you to follow along on the screen. As we celebrate CU research, we choose to acknowledge the space we occupy and the land upon which we study, work, and research. The University of Colorado's flagship university honors and recognizes the many contributions of Indigenous peoples in our state. CU Boulder acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, and many other Native American nations. Their forced removal from these territories has caused devastating and lasting impacts. While the University of Colorado Boulder can never undo or rectify the devastation wrought on Indigenous peoples, we commit to improving and enhancing engagement with Indigenous peoples and issues locally and globally. We will do this by recognizing and amplifying the voices of Indigenous CU Boulder students, staff, and faculty and their work, educating, conducting research, supporting student success, and integrating Indigenous knowledge, consulting, engaging, and working collaboratively with tribal nations to enhance our ability to provide access and culturally sensitive support, and to recruit, retain, and graduate Native American students in a climate that is inclusive and respectful. If you would like to uplift Indigenous and Native American voices, please consider giving to the Center of Native American and Indigenous Studies as a way to create opportunities for Native American students and educators alike. So whether you're new to this event, Coloradan Conversations, or attended all of them 3 years, I'd like to share a little about the Coloradan Alumni magazine and these events. So we send out the magazine 3 times a year to over 300,000 forever buffs. And in return, you call us, you send us emails, you send us handwritten notes, you reach out to us on social media, and you're always engaging with us in terms of like what you read or what you remember, what you thought about an article. I even had somebody say like, I really just want to have a conversation with you about this article. I just need to talk to you. And we did. We found time and we discussed it and we dug in. But these conversations were happening really kind of one-to-one, here and there. There were a lot of them. But we thought, well, what if we brought people together and gave them the opportunity to have that direct connection with faculty members, with alumni, with researchers, and really dive into the topic and build community, because there's so many curious folks in our Forever Buffs world. So, with that, I think out of the belief that conversations are powerful and they can spur new knowledge and drive people to action, we created this event, and we're kind of in the beginning of year 4, so thank you for attending. Tonight's conversation is inspired by articles from the fall 2023 Coloradan, and if you don't already have a copy, there's some out at the desk, and also fully available online. If you're here in person, we hope that you stay afterward for a complimentary reception and to stay and talk with your new friends and also with our faculty, researchers, and alums who are speaking tonight. So, in the age of technological advances, progress still hinges on an essential human experience: trust. In a world where artificial intelligence is evolving at a really rapid pace, there's this important question that remains: how should we be using it, and can it be trusted? So with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Majid Zamani. Majid is an associate professor of computer science and co-associate chair for graduate education in computer science. He's leading hybrid control systems lab at CU Boulder, where he researches verification and control of cyber, physical, and hybrid systems, embedded control software synthesis, networked control systems, and incremental properties of nonlinear control systems. Majid, welcome to the stage.
Thank you for the nice introduction. So, good evening. So, the title of my presentation is, Should You Trust an Autonomous Vehicle? And hopefully by the end of my presentation, you will realize that you should not trust an autonomous vehicle. And the reason for that is, okay, let's see what is the bottleneck in deploying autonomous vehicle, right? So unfortunately, ensuring safety through perception and prediction posed a great challenge in deploying autonomous car. So let's look at this example. Let's say there is a child is, biking, going to a street, and there is a car approaching. So what are the sensors on the autonomous car? So we have cameras, we have LiDAR, we have radar, right? So they actually get all these inputs from the environment. So what is their main role? So their main role is to actually reconstruct the model of the environment, right? So, and the question is, how do we construct this computer's model of the world which is around the vehicle, right? So we are using machine learning techniques, namely deep neural network, to actually construct this huge network which gets all these inputs from video, from radar, from LiDAR, and it tries to construct the world around the vehicle. For example, it says, okay, child is riding a bike 10 meters ahead, entering the street, right? So, of course, the car has to decide based on the action of the child which is biking. So, and of course, the model goes inside different layer, which is called path planning and motion planning, right? So now the car has to navigate in the environment. Of course, it should prevent colliding with the, kids on the bike. And of course, it has to respect traffic light and traffic rules. So you see this part, which I call it perception, this is totally led by machine learning techniques. My own research actually lies here on the path planning and motion planning. And so the good news is we can actually provide formal guarantee. We can provide mathematical guarantee that the motion planning and the path planning is correct as long as the computer's model is correct. So that's the assumption, right? So, okay, what can go wrong? So unfortunately, this model is built completely based on scene data. The data that the car has been observed so far, so they train this, and this is the problem that we are actually facing. So let me actually dive into this more. So machine learning techniques, they do very good in patterns that they has encountered so far. They do great. But the problem is about those scenarios that they have not encountered. And guess what? There are tons of novelty in the world. I mean, you go to different countries, you see things that you haven't seen in your life, right? And in fact, 10 years from now, you're going to see things which you never thought you're going to see in your life. So let me actually ask this question. I put a picture here, and raise your hand if you think that picture represents a chicken. So raise your hand if you think it's a chicken. So now let's put this picture in one of the state-of-the-art image processing algorithm, which is behind the perception engine in the autonomous vehicle, which they are supposed to build the world around the vehicle. And the answer is 99% this is not a person. And this is the problem we are facing. And this is the main reason we cannot deploy self-driving car. So, and these are called edge cases, right? Or corner cases. So these are unforeseen surprises. So these won't surface actually during the testing, and this is the problem. So let's say your self-driving car is able to actually do well in 98% or even 99% of scenario. Is that 1% really the bottleneck? And the answer is yes. So if you want to deploy self-driving car, the guarantee you should provide is in the order of 0.109 after that. Then you are ready to say, okay, I'm actually ready to deploy a self-driving car. And these edge cases are the scenario that you did not even think about it when you were designing your self-driving car. So, of course, the challenge lies in covering everything. Here, a police officer decided to wear a chicken costume. Or are you able to design a self-driving car who's able to actually detect, the holes in the road, right? So maybe as a human, we have some insight, right? Or here, as you can see, there is a reflection of another car in the truck, which is actually driving in front of you. And also, your self-driving car should be compatible and should be, able to navigate in a very complex traffic situation in different countries. So here you can see this magic roundabout, right? So, and of course, it should be able to understand, for example, here, there is a person. Is this person standing next to the bike, or is this person is biking? And you might say, does this matter? Of course it matters. Why is that? Because if the person is biking, you have to predict the speed of the person, right? If it's a standing, so then, these are totally two different assumptions. And that's going to affect on the deployment of the self-driving car and the navigation. So, okay, what is the current practice? Public road testing, right? If you go to San Francisco, you've seen a lot of them, right? What is the pros of them? Of course, they're very efficient in identifying straightforward cases, right? And most of them has been driven in sunny sky. Arizona, Las Vegas, San Francisco, right? And you know why. So what is the cons? So first of all, they're very costly. So this is a self-driving car company in China. They're actually trying to test on a designated lane, right? And they can, at the same time, they can be dangerous. So this is the Uber car crash happened in Arizona, 2018. A pedestrian died. And after this incident, Uber actually shut down the whole autonomy division. So one incident, they shut it down, right? So because it affected on people's perception. So, and I'm going to tell you, brute force road testing doesn't work. And the reason for that is, so let's look at the statistic we have. We have one fatal crash for every 100 million of miles in the US. That includes drunk driver, right? One fatal crash in every 100 million miles. Okay, so let's say we're going to get the better statistical guarantee. So let's say we test at a rate of 3 to 10 times longer than this, one fatal crash per 100 million mile. So that requires approximately 1 billion miles of testing, which means 25 round trips on every paved road in the world. That's the amount of testing you have to do. And you're only allowed to have at most 10 fatal crash. This is not the end of a story. Guess what? You update your software. You update the geometry of your car. It's a sedan, become a SUV. You change the sensor camera. You have to repeat the test from scratch. The result of the previous test does not carry over if you do some changes in your system. So you see, brute force testing is not practical. So the good news is industry is actually working on some standards for autonomous driving or autonomous vehicle. So these are some of them on functional safety, which existed 10 years already. And there's a new one actually developed in European Union, which is called SOTIF, safety of intended functionality, which tries to iteratively mitigate discovered unknowns. So, of course, additionally, we also need to have a list of, did you think about that, right? These are the unknowns that we have to think about it, the corner cases, the edge cases which might happen in reality, and we have not thought about them, right? So we need to actually continuously enhance based on the lesson learned, and also, we need to have feedback from the unexpected scenario which might happen. So, and this actually happened in Pittsburgh, right? This is a bus. And so in this case, the driver was actually, in real time, he decided the best option is I let the passenger go out of the bus. So now imagine it was a self-driving bus. So, okay, what is the journey to autonomous vehicle safety? We need to actually change the culture within the industry. And we need to provide safety during on-road testing. For example, the incident happened with the Uber crash. So they shut down the whole division, right? So if we cannot provide safety during testing, so that actually is going to impact and it's going to delay the whole process for several years. So we need to actually evolve beyond a rush demo mentality, which is the case now in US. So European a little bit, they are more on the conservative mindset. They're taking their time, they're following the standard. But this demo mindset, which also makes sense because they need to secure the next phase of funding, right? They need to deploy something. So we need to also build stakeholder trust for acceptable safety. For example, as you recall, I said we are using machine learning techniques for the perception. So we need to actually have system-level safety for that. And we need to also have our own independent safety assessment for self-driving car. Many actually industry, they do have independent safety assessment. FAA, petroleum industry, many industry. Car industry, actually one of the few which we do not have independent safety assessment. So we need to also leverage industry safety standards. We need to revise regulation and maybe make them mandatory, right? So it's very strange to hear that actually many of the self-driving car companies in the US, they are fighting hard to not have any standard for autonomous vehicle. So, and of course, we need to employ traditional software safety, enhanced with addressing, of course, the unknown unknowns during the deployment regarding those corner cases which might happen. So, yeah, this is the end of my presentation. And I wanted to thank the funding agency in the US, in the European Union, as well as in Germany for helping my research. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Majid. Our next speaker is Eileen Rosina. Eileen recently earned her MFA in Art and Art Practices from the College of Arts and Sciences. She's an artist, experimental filmmaker, and naturalist. Through biomimicry and the study of biophilia, her work examines human spiritual and social disconnection with nature, and seeks to raise questions about realizing a radically different metaphoric mapping of time, space, and our place in the world. Eileen.
Good evening. Okay, so AI is a tool, just like a paintbrush for some artists. It's clear that now anyone with an internet connection and an idea can generate a pretty convincing piece of art. For me, this brings up questions of authorship and the appropriated image. Walter Benjamin, the media theorist and philosopher, comes to mind. He is well known for theorizing that the reproducibility of art really reduces its key value, its aura, but with an important trade-off of accessibility, of holding a wider audience through the copy. Sometimes I think of my art practice as the antithesis of AI and generated art because I spend hundreds of hours in riparian muck collecting plant material. I grow most of my flowers from seed over many months, literally getting my hands in the dirt. My work embraces ephemerality. It's not always recorded, and oftentimes it gets composted back into the earth. And that is something I love about it. I meet AI with both marvel and fear. As someone with deep environmental concerns, I marvel at its ability to offer potential climate solutions, like calculating the most needed areas and potential models for safer wildfire-controlled burns. Or for locating key minerals like lithium, cobalt, or copper, without having to tear into the earth just to simply look for them. I also have fears. Abstract fears that AI will dampen curiosity of the unknown, originality of wonder. I have concerns about our discernment of what is real, the illusion of real, and a general apathetic attitude to authenticity. We let new technologies simply wash over us, and this technocultural indifference could be hugely consequential for our future. I believe we need a new spiritual belief system. We need the humanities and the arts to help guide this inevitable evolution of AI in our lives. And we have the power to define this era now. I believe that AI can help us know and do more, but it should never be at the expense of knowing and thinking for ourselves. These machines are not neutral. They're fallible systems. We need to speak more of the assumptions of machine neutrality and technological objectivity. I would like to quote Joy Buolamwini from her most recent book, Unmasking AI, which I recommend. It just came out last year. And I quote, "The critique of artificial intelligence is not a Luddite call to break machines, but a call to break harmful assumptions about machines, and thus enable the construction of better tools and, more important, better societies." So how can we ask the more beautiful questions of AI to reimagine human potential and steer the ship towards utopia? We are the drivers of AI, and it is indeed a mirror, an amplification of ourselves. At this point in our spiritual evolution, how can we keep a strong anchor in our humanity, and a strong anchor in our humanity? And what exactly is the thing that makes us so uniquely human anyways? The musician Nick Cave has written that there is little left in the modern world that is sacred, but art still offers us the opportunity to experience the hallowed, mysterious, reverential, and the uniquely human. So art might be the most important method to respond to these enormous questions of AI. The artist Sarah Z, this is from her most recent exhibit, Time Lapse in New York, the Guggenheim. She has equated the digital with a sense of longing. You know, after interacting with the digital sphere, many of us are left wanting the full sensual experience, the texture, the temperature, the smell. More and more people are looking for an analog antidote. As a time-based artist myself, I am interested in examining the impact that AI has had on the idea of speed. The speed in which we obtain information, of which we share information, and of which we experience things. I'm interested in the short and long-term impacts that it has had on us. So moving forward, my goals as an artist are to craft evocative pieces of art that really humanize the impact of AI-generated mistakes. I hope to attempt to find the beauty in technology and to treat AI with respect, with caution, and most importantly, with curiosity. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Eileen. Our next speaker is Dr. Kai R. Larson. Kai is a professor at the Leeds School of Business and leads the Human Behavior Project, supported by NSF and NIH. For the last 20 years, he has used language models and AI to improve and automate research methods. Kai's book on automated machine learning was published by Oxford University Press. He was named one of the 75 leading academic data leaders of 2022 by CDO magazine, and one of the 50 best undergraduate business professors of 2023 by Poets and Quants magazine. Kai, to the stage.
Hi, good evening. I'm Kai Larsen. I'm primarily a Norwegian. Secondarily, I'm a husband, father, and an academic gambler. I want to accomplish one thing in my life. I want to find the one thing that no one has seen before. Unfortunately, that's really weird stuff, so I'm not going to talk about that today. But I will share with you my experience in 20 years of developing AI and language models and what it makes me think about what's going on right now. I wanted to share with you 6 implications of AI that may be a little deeper, a little bit more scary. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong about everything. Number 1, it is not paranoia if someone's out to get you. Now, we know that organizations are collecting data about us and have been for decades, a lot of data about us. So far, they have struggled to put all of those pieces together. But we're now starting to get there in terms of tools that are capable of combining all of this information into one picture of who we really are. Take a look at this list of organizations that I bet you heard of a lot of them. Can you help me remember the name of the last organization that has these 3 pieces that are necessary to really figure out who we are? Anyone? Apple is definitely missing. Okay. I shouldn't be mad. IBM is pretty awesome. Don't get me wrong. They struggled a lot with the AI era. What's another one? The NSA. Wait, what? The government? But we have laws that say they can't collect information about us. In Utah. That's right. The biggest hard drive in the world, pretty much, in the desert of Utah, just storing information about us. They're not allowed to look at it until they need it, but that's how they interpret the law, right? So my favorite is actually on this list is Amazon. They're about to come out with Rufus. They started rolling that out, looking at all of our purchases, all of our reviews, everything. Should be interesting to see what they actually share with us and what they use behind closed doors about us. X, or Twitter, I think is going to be a big one. They're the only place that has up-to-date information about what's going on in the world when something goes wrong. No one else can do it. When there's a wildfire in Colorado, where do you go? Where's the only way to get a sense of what's actually going on as it's going on? Twitter or X, right? That's going to be huge. And then, of course, NSA, right? Implication number 2, we have stopped evolving. As a human being, it takes 20 years for me to procreate. I looked really hard, found myself a really smart wife, and put her through school, neurosurgeon now, all of that, right? And then we had kids, and that kid is smarter than me, for sure. So moving forward, right, but 20 years, are you kidding me? We can't wait for that. It's basically flat for the humanity. And the kind of numbers that we're going to see for machines in terms of speed, and we're finding out that speed is really important. Speed is really important now that software is catching up. So what is going to happen? We don't know. We just know that they are going to be able to process things much faster than all the human brains put together. And that's not going to be the end of it. What does it mean? Don't know. Machine ethics are not like human ethics. If you look at how, for example, or everyone's favorite ChatGPT was created, right? Basically, they took a bunch of text, lots of billions and billions of documents, put it through training for months and months and months until it understood how words belong together. Which words are similar to which is not a whole lot more than that. And then they realized, well, we can make it spit out answers to questions, but they're not very good answers. So they added this additional step where they had human beings train the algorithm to provide better answers. Well, what do you think was the problem still? Bias was still in there. What else? Costly for sure. This costs a lot of money. This costs a lot of money. But what's still happening? That algorithm is a bastard. Holy moly, is that algorithm terrible. If you give it half a chance, it's going to take conversations between human beings that it's learned the language of. You start down the wrong path with one of these algorithms, and it will threaten your life. It will actually tell you it's going to show up at your home and basically destroy your knees, something that it takes me a lot of biking to do otherwise, right? So we added safety blocks, trying to make sure it does not threaten people too much and isn't too biased, etc. But guess what? Those who don't care about this part have a huge advantage. Let's talk about this issue with where Uber shuts down a whole division just because one human being died, right? That's the right thing to do. Do you think if China starts to build AI into, let me not use China, let me use an example of some random dictatorship that is monitoring all its citizens, and let's say one of them die because of AI. Are they going to be like, we should stop doing this? This is quite problematic. People are dying. Of course they're not. It's not an issue to them. Anyone follow this person? Right? How awesome is Taylor Swift? Right? So is this AI generated, you think? Who thinks this AI generated? Have you heard what AI did to her? I bet you all have heard what AI did to her, right? It's really some terrible person who did it, right? But the tools are there. This is actually her from an award ceremony. It's a real picture. I would not dare to bring a fake picture of Taylor Swift. AI cannot solve the big problems. It can't. It just can't. It's never going to be able to. And guess what? It's because they're human problems. Why can't they solve it? Well, they can solve it, but we don't want them to, right? Because the only way to solve it is take the human out of the equation, right? So we cannot get it to solve this. I'll give you an example. You don't have to walk too far off Pearl Street to see this, right? It's everywhere in our country right now. Homelessness everywhere. According to the latest numbers, 650,000 Americans are homeless right now. Think about that. Could we solve that if we wanted to, you think? Right now, Congress is talking about, should we send $80 billion to Ukraine and Israel, right? They think they can afford it. It's just a political decision. Do they want to? Take that money, and I'm not saying you shouldn't send that money where they want to send it. I have no opinion on that. But take $80 billion and use it on homelessness. That's $113,000 per homeless person in the US. Not saying that will solve the problem, but it certainly would be a first good step, right? We could solve it ourselves. AI cannot solve this for us. However, AI can solve small problems. It can help us get to self-driving cars. Hopefully ones that won't kill us too often, right? It can fix love. I mean, we can create now robots that feel like a human being for some people. Most of us will probably still want our wife, at least I do. But some people will be happy with this sort of fake love. We can do healthcare diagnostics. We're getting better at that. Traffic management, supply chain. We'll talk more about education later. It can be automated really well. We haven't gotten there yet, but we will. Finally, AI itself may create problems that are beyond our reckoning. Right now, 70% of all humans in this world live in a dictatorship. 70%. This is increasing. This is one of the fastest increasing numbers in the world when it comes to how political trends are changing. Why? Probably because technology is making it so easy to control people. AI will help that. It will only be easier to get people under control. First, you need to grab political control, then you need to implement tech, and then you need to put AI on top of that, and it gets much easier. Can someone help me? Last question of the night. What's the name of that billionaire again? No. No, I don't think he's ever done that. What was that? I don't think there's such a billionaire out there. Reality is, any billionaire who tried to take over for all the jobs that are going to go away would go bankrupt within a year. There is no solution there. Are these jobs going away? They absolutely are. Are they going to be replaced? We don't know. That's the part we don't know the answer to. We know they're going away. We just don't know whether they're going to be replaced with something else or not. The typical example you'll hear is something like the horsewhip creator or the person who made saddles, right? Yes, they went away with a car, but guess what? Lots of new jobs opened up. But did that person get those jobs? That's not so clear. So I'd say in conclusion, we're not yet at the need for some kind of a war against the thinking machines, but it might be needed in 100 years, 1,000 years, we will see. Machines will likely not be any more evil than the humans who yield them yet. And all will probably be well for the foreseeable future. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Kai. Our final speaker tonight is Dr. Rick Stevens. Rick is an Associate Dean of Undergraduate Education at the College of Media, Communication, and Information. His research delves into how ideologies form and how media spreads these ideas. He's particularly interested in how technology infrastructure impacts message delivery, communication technology policy, and the evolving landscape of public discourse due to media and technology platforms. Rick, welcome to the stage.
Thank you. This is a statement from one of our syllabi. in the college. This course, CMCI 1040, is a foundations course. This is the course that all of our first-year students coming into the college take. So we usually get about 300 to 400 of them at once in the room. And this is pretty typical where we say you are not to use AI in this class. In this particular class, students are learning to write. They are learning to talk to people, interview, get ideas, create culture, all of the very basics of research, all of that. This is a very common syllabus statement that we have around certain classes in our college. Any of our courses that have students learning these very basic, learning to write, learning to think, learning to express themselves, learning to produce media for the first time, we typically tell them you're not to use AI. However, it's a lot more complicated once we start moving up into our curriculum. This is also an AI statement, and if you notice, they get longer. The further a student gets into our curriculum, you see the lengthening of the syllabi in general, but especially around items like this. This is actually from one of my courses. I teach a course on comic books, culture, and industry, where students learn about the formation of that medium and all of the culture and content that led to all of the movies that they're excited and interested in. In that course, I usually have around 100 students, and usually about 20 of them are from my program, which means I've got a lot of students that are not ours, coming from outside our program, who are now being forced to write research papers, often for the first time in their academic career. They're having to do things not our way for the first time. And many times in that space, I will give more options. You shouldn't, my students will not be using AI to produce their research papers, but if you are from outside of our way, there are multiple rubrics embedded in most of the core deliverable assignments. If you are not used to doing this is the first time. This class is not really about you learning how to write. This class is about you applying the analysis of all of this historical and cultural theory to the topic that you're looking at. And so we'll have different rubrics for that to focus on the goals of that. We have lots of courses that have to do things like that, that say, now the goal of this class is not that base core writing, here are our choices. But I want to also talk about this statement. This is another course. I team teach this course with one of our alums who works in the entertainment industry. And the purpose of this course is actually to have students create new entertainment franchise properties, to create a transmedia world Bible. I'll unpack that a little bit in a moment. And by the end of the class, actually to people in the entertainment industry and get them to evaluate it. And that's the goal of the course. This is a capstone course. By the time students get here, they are near the end of their academic journey. And so in this course, we encourage them to use AI quite a bit. And here's why. This course is pushing them to develop a media world Bible which says, here is how this franchise works, here's who the characters are, the rules of the system, this is how the film version of this might work, the comic book version of this might work, the animated show of this might work, the action figure, the merchandise, all of these things that exist within this franchise, which means we have students that are having to create media plans for things they are not experts in. They don't have time to go create all of this actual content. So normally when people do this in Hollywood, a pitch to someone in industry might include something like this. And in fact, the earliest version of this class had students doing this, which is to say, there's a character in this story that is a religious leader, and just think about Mark Hamill. We don't have Mark Hamill. This project doesn't exist, but think about someone like Mark Hamill that acts this particular way, and that's what this character is supposed to be. Or think about the mayor of this city, and think about somebody like Robert De Niro. And in Hollywood, when you're pitching in a boardroom, people often will have headshots of people not attached, or they'll have scenes or elements from other pieces of media, because inside that room, we're just brainstorming. We're just talking about things. This is not for public consumption or commercial activity. What AI allows our students to do, though, is to move past this model where they will say, think of a dystopic technology future, but also think about Kim Possible. I want those two things together, and this is the show that I'm trying to create for you. And instead, start to show more clearly what their vision is, and give more of an idea of what characters are, how they operate in these worlds, etc. What the environments actually look like, instead of having to create this imagination moment. Students, when they pitch these projects, usually are doing that in minutes. We teach them to pitch the 1-minute version, the 8-minute version, the 15-minute version. So they don't have time to spend a lot of mental processing. How does this world work? What are its physics? What are its rules? What are the themes? All of that can be shown more easily when students are drawing on these materials. In a World Bible, I also want to talk about one of the reasons why we use AI ourselves as faculty sometimes. A good World Bible has a set of operational themes. This is what this show, movie, franchise is about, how it works. There's a certain phrase that's always going to be a part of it. It has character wheels. Characters, when they come into contact with each other, have logics that create narrative, that create drama. And of course, there are environments. And a good franchise is almost self-perpetuating. We say that story tells us what it's about because we set good rules into place and now we can turn it loose. So when students have done a good job, sometimes we ask them to create a script that they did not write, and if their rules are good, that script is often good. Which is both alarming, because we think about scriptwriters out there and what the future of this may hold, but for media planners, the people that are putting together the logics of how these stories have to be told, using artificial intelligence for this 1-semester class experience gives them an efficient jumpstart on production, a way to apply that in an evaluative mode. Now, I will tell you, for all of our friends and alumni that are out there that are screenwriters, these don't go so well right now. And that is because, as we've been talking about, AA is not really good at certain things. The most critical literacy around AI that we try to push into our students is to think about what the tool thinks it's for versus what we're trying to use it for, because those are not always the same. My early example that I have with my first years, I'm always trying to explain to them, anytime you turn in a paper that is generated by ChatGPT, I can spot it in a second, because the software that is called chat is really good at chat, which is not research. It's really good at BSing its way through a cocktail party talking about research, but it's not good at actually generating research yet. And you can usually see that. Now, on some of these layers, some of the pitfalls and the concerns that come with that, we are constantly worried about that. I've received papers where someone clearly used AI and did not disclose they were doing that. And I usually find it because it will invent sources I've never heard of. And that actually, as it turns out, don't exist. That is the way this replication of research looks. It's not good at it. And it can't fool someone who is. In our college, we have 6 departments that have a multitude of programmed functions thinking about media, communication, and information across a variety of skills. We try to teach our students with AI, about AI, and through AI, these tools to be used for extending, making our jobs more efficient, reaching populations we couldn't reach. We don't have enough people doing journalism in the world. We don't have enough people who can write. We don't have enough people who can assess large data sets and find critical information needs for populations. And so how can we take our expertise and then use this artificial extension of our capabilities into other spaces? The one thing we try to make sure they do understand, though, is, and this is always the problem in education, when we use AI to do the learning, that serves neither the student nor the tool, as it turns out. And so that's the real trick, is trying to have a much more nuanced and thoughtful approach to leveraging tools that are going to be in their workplace, that are going to be part of their social lives, but in a more critical way that they are using it to extend what we're trying to get them to be good at doing, which still is thinking, writing, researching, assessing, and speaking, and using tools to enhance that. That's where I'm going to stop, and I think we are now headed for Q&A.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Rick. So we've had 4 really wonderful presentations, and I'm inviting Eileen, Kai, and Majid back to the stage, and we're going to transition into a Q&A. So that's going to include some questions that I have prepared, but also questions from the audience. So whether you're online at home or you're here, I've got an iPad that will send me questions from Zoom, thanks to my colleague. And the first question for the evening, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts bubbling up with new ideas or maybe questions you came in with. But our first question for you is, how are you already using AI in your work, in your life? And did tonight's speakers cause you to think about how you're using it, maybe think about using it differently or spur a new thought? So,
and I'll bring you the microphone so that the people on Zoom can hear you as well. So just raise your hand and I'll come to you.
don't be
And
shy.
Zoom
There we
folks?
go.
Zoom folks, you can weigh in too through the chat.
Thank you. I work at the Lead School of Business, so I'm well acquainted with Kai Larson. I use it daily. I use it in every aspect. I run the PhD program for the Lead School of Business, and I recently submitted a grant using AI as a writing style editing, not to generate. I was very specific not to have it generate any content. I had already written the grant, and I pushed it through ChatGPT to just inform the writing style. If you were to look at the 2 grants, you can see that they're the same, just flowery words. So I use it daily for correspondence, for really things to help me in my daily job. So.
And did you use it exactly as it came out of ChatGPT, or did you then manipulate it again?
So I have been using it actually about a year now, and it's been a learning curve. You definitely have to learn how to speak to the AIs. The prompt engineering is very specific, and you can say things multiple different ways and get multiple different responses. So it's definitely helpful to understand how to communicate with it. It's a very specific, it's almost like a foreign language. You have to learn how to speak to it to get the responses that you are needing.
Thank you for sharing. Got no questions from online yet, but here's another one in the audience. Thank you. And tell us your name and
Chris
where you're
Schneider.
from.
Thank you, everyone. I use it daily. I used 4 of them today for about 4.5 hours. Image creation, crypto and stock market analysis. It beats any technical analyst I've run into so far. More image creation. Loaded a 112-page PDF of notes from the Senate Subcommittee on FinTech, because I'm not going to read that. But this thing can unpack it pretty well when you load a PDF into Cloud AI. So there's, I've been a technology educator for 20 years, and I mean the reality that I've seen as an IT person is I've made a career off of people's unwillingness to use software. You laugh. Who has a Gmail account?
Yeah. Lots of hands up.
Right? As an IT person, I know that I sacrifice a measure of security for a measure of convenience, and have since day one. I'm fascinated with this stuff. I'm kind of scared of what it could do, right? We could split the atom to get clean energy, or we could vaporize Hiroshima. Pick one, right? But it's not, I don't see it as a zero-sum game. right? So much out there. And the phrase that I've been just ringing in my ears lately is everyone that I listen to and talk to and follow about this stuff is that this is the worst AI we're ever going to use. The Model T is the worst car you're ever going to drive.
Right.
You know? Are we grounding? Does FAA shut down everything because Boeing 737s can't figure it out still, or does the Boeing price of the stock plummet, and then they force that regulation? Right? I agree. There's going to be a gross body count. How do we react to it? Really, and are we going to use AI to fix that? Curious about that myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question, or we can move in? I don't see any hands up. Okay, so we'll move to the questions we have ready. And let me orient myself to my papers here. Okay, so for all of you who already spoke, first question, what's the biggest role that you think AI will play inside of the classrooms at CU or is already playing? So really just to talk to how it's impacting your classroom experience and yeah, whether that's as a student or a teacher.
I mean, one of the benefits is there's so much about the education process that is repetition, teaching, tutoring, reviewing, grading, all of these kinds of skills. And the more that we can get tireless eyes on them, they free up the shrinking human labor to do more critical aspects of education. So there's a lot, anything that AI is really good at pattern recognition. So anything that is repetitious and has a pattern to it, I think that's where, there's only so many tutors we can hire to sit over someone's shoulder, but there's all kinds of opportunity for automating portions of that repetitious learning experience.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I guess I'm teaching data science this semester, and all the assignments are Python coding. They have to code. So, and I always tell the students that you can actually use ChatGPT and ask for the pseudocode and then you have to understand the pseudocode and then implement it in Python. So I said, why not? Because you come to office hours or you ask the TA for the same help, but now you're getting this help in real time. In fact, 24/7. So you have a tailored education just to you, right? Because when you interact with ChatGPT, it actually gets tailored to you. So it understands the, the trajectory of your learning. So it can actually, of course, now I'm going toward the territory of privacy and security, but you can share, your grades, and which assignment you did not do well on which topics. And it can actually provide a personalized guideline to a student. And I think and I also agree with the, automated grading. And because now we can free up the time of the graders and also for content creation, right? Figures and slides. So for example, I draw a picture on a piece of paper. I take a picture of it and I ask ChatGPT to generate a text code out of it. I can use that code in my LaTeX, and now I have all of a sudden a very clean picture of my hand drawing picture on a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. So it frees my time as well, right? I used to spend half a day to code that for just a picture, and now ChatGPT can actually look at my hand drawing picture and generate the code, and I can use that in a code environment called LaTeX, and I can generate a very nice and beautiful picture from my slide for my lecture.
I think that it's really early days when it comes to education and automating it. I'm guessing one of the things we're learning about AI is that it's really, really good at tiny little things that are repeated often, right? So you have now millions of teachers all over the world trying to automate their classes. And some of them are good at it and some of them are not so good at it. We're learning, like in my slides, that this technology is basically like a genie, right? You don't ask the question right and you end up a woman instead of with a lovely wife. I don't know, you're asking for a wish and it's not what you want, right? But I do think that when you look at millions of teachers trying to automate thousands of classes, one of them is going to get it right. And then it's just a matter of repeating that class over and over again. And we're now getting to the point where you can automate, you can take someone's face, you can take their voice, you guys make up your mind. Do you want to be in my classroom or do you want to be in Taylor Swift's classroom? I'm guessing that maybe I'll get one or two of you guys, but I'm guessing not a whole lot of the kids here are going to pick me.
Or do you want to be in his class where he sounds like Taylor Swift? I might do that.
Yeah, I think they're still going to want her face.
So I should actually add one more thing. In my department, we are already entertaining the idea of developing a chatbot. And for graduate students, if they have questions about deadlines, right, requirements of the degree, because most of our graduate advisors' time has been spent just answering the questions which the student can find the answer online somewhere. So either the information is not disclosed in a clear way, but now imagine that we can actually develop this chatbot and then they can just ask any questions, right, regarding requirements, deadlines, all the implications about the list of courses they're going to take regarding all the way till their graduation. I think that will free up a lot of time from our graduate advisors in the department. So we're already looking into that.
You hit on a good point that I think the university has this too for prospective students. If you land on certain pages of the website, the chat bot pops up and can answer a lot of the information that's, asked 100 times a day.
Yes.
What's the application deadline for a first-year student?
Exactly.
Yeah. Eileen, do you want to add anything there about maybe the role it was playing inside your classrooms? I know you recently completed your MFA.
I think for me, it's just another tool that it's not the only answer, right? I mean, you can use that, but yes, it's not it's one component of research or generating a piece of creative art. I think it's more about applying that in repetition, that kind of thing that you learn over and over again, not just demonstrate recall. I mean, that's just to pass the test or whatever, but I don't know. I think I'm just excited to see how this changes accessibility for education, beyond university as well, K through 12 across the world. People could have access to world-class education and with an internet, it's just profound to think about that and how that could change things. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to jump to some questions from our colleagues or friends on Zoom. This one's very specific. Can you explain asking for the pseudocode for the novice? Are there AI tools we should use to supplement our own craftsmanship and learning? I'm trying to remember who, somebody mentioned pseudocode.
I mentioned it,
okay.
Yes. So can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Can you explain asking for the pseudocode for the novice? So let's just start with, what does it mean to use pseudocode?
So, okay, when I say pseudocode so let's say I ask the student to write a Python code which does some sort of clustering, right? They get a lot of data, let's say handwritten digit data, right? And then they are supposed to design a code and come up with this cluster which can recognize the digit, right? So now what I ask them is, because pseudocode is written in English, right? So you just say, okay, start, these are the inputs to the program. What are the inputs? And what is the output of the program? And then these are for example, there is a for loop involved. For every data point, you have to do this sequence of actions. So the line in the pseudocode is actually English sentences, right? It's not the code itself. So now they understand the routine behind the Python code, right? So they go through these English sentences, and then they have to understand, right? Because if you don't understand, you cannot code it in Python. So then they will understand the English that, okay, now I need to have a for loop which, for example, gets the data point, and it needs to do this sort of analysis over those data points. So now after that, when they understand, then they can actually code the Python. So, and for me, if they come to, let's say, my office hours, I will actually do that on the whiteboard. I will say, okay, let's exactly practice what I teach in the class regarding clustering algorithm. So what is the input to the algorithm? Is your data point plus the number of clusters you would like to have, right? And what is the output is going to be the optimal clustering. So this is the input, this is the output. And now let's see what are the actions we have to do over the data point. So we'll actually write those on the whiteboard for the students. And I'll say, okay, so now you have all the ingredients. So now your job is to actually go and implement this in Python. So I think that's the beauty of using ChatGPT or any large language model to help you to, like what I was going to do on the whiteboard for the students. Now they can actually ask at midnight from ChatGPT to come up with this pseudocode. But then they still have to understand, because if you do not understand, you cannot write it in Python. Even if you're able to write, it might not give you the correct answer. So you have to understand it, right? So, and also I should say that maybe the pseudocode comes out of ChatGPT might not be correct. But for very common routines, believe me, most of the routines or pseudocode that comes out of ChatGPT, it is in fact correct. Because these are not very sophisticated algorithms that they need to implement. So, yeah. I don't know if that answered the question.
We have the question came from someone on Zoom. So I think it did help to clarify that it's like this working through the logic, not the actual code. It's working through like what are the questions and the things I have to consider to get things in order to correctly write in Python.
Yes, and also I should add one more thing. So this is not just for a student. I know Microsoft is heavily using the GPT, which is not available, by the way, for programming to generate C code. And the way they do is, for many common routines, they don't need to use programmer anymore, right? They can actually rely on large language model to generate the code. So now imagine how much they can actually benefit in terms of efficiency, speed. So what they do is, because large language model, they not only good in repeating, they also have learning capability, meaning that it gives you something, but it's wrong. But then you don't give up. You tell ChatGPT why it is wrong. You provide a counterexample. So it learns from the mistake. And it says, oh, sorry for that. So now let me generate a new one. So it gives you a new code. So now you iterate again. You said, no, but look, the second one is also wrong. Why is that? Because look at this sequence of, for example, strings. It actually does not satisfy what you generated. So it will learn, iterates, and eventually it will actually generate a correct code. And that's what is actually is going to be very important for the future, right? You can provide, interact, provide counterexamples, and it learns from its own mistake, and it tries to fix itself. So I think I see great potential in that direction as well. And I mean, industry is already using that.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go back to one of the other planned questions. So let's go back a little bit to the campus student experience. What kind of conversations are you having, have you had about ethics and AI with students? If you can maybe have an example of one where you dug in with the student or had to think through how someone wanted to use it or somebody did use it.
Well, the example I was talking about in one of my classes is having to go back to a student and say, yes, you got your 12-page research paper or whatever it was in on time, but you fabricated 2 sources. And so that you understand, you communicated to your professor, who is an expert in this area, that you thought there were sources that expert wasn't aware of, right? I mean, all these like layers to try to get them to see that these assignments, students have a tendency to turn their education into check boxes and rites of passage. They're just trying to get through things instead of seeing them as the critical life building skill moments that there are. But just to show them that this software doesn't hate you, and it doesn't hate me. It doesn't love you. It doesn't love me. It does exactly what you told it to do. So you told it to do the wrong thing. And so you need to learn from this how to get your tools to work for you, and for me, and for us, right? And so that these negative outcomes aren't happening. And that way, at least just put them into, if they, we also will talk about ethics and good of society and what it means to co-opt somebody else's work, to misrepresent resources and all that, and what it does to our democracy, our systems of knowledge, et cetera. But it also puts it in their world. Your contribution was this. And your contribution wasn't because you wrote this thing, it's because you asked the wrong question, or you gave the wrong prompt, and that is also a skill. So sometimes it's ethical question asking, which is a big part of this.
It's interesting because that is, right, an aspect of critical thinking, and then digging to, okay, you asked one question, right or wrong, like ask another, what's the next one? How else could you ask it? What did you forget to ask? And
worse, I mean, how did you not realize how bad this paper was? I mean, and that's a skill we keep trying to teach them, is you have to learn to write well to allow AI to write well on your behalf, because you still have to become the editor of your own work. And that means that you have some kind of a critical command of what those skills are. But that's the danger. And that's the part that we're always wrestling with in higher education, is trying to get students not to use it as a shortcut to avoid learning those skills, which some of them sometimes tend to do.
Yeah.
I do a lot of things in my machine learning class to try and get some of the ethical aspects of using these tools through. There's an exercise I've done for 15 years now. I only do it roughly every third year because I don't want the students to have heard of it. I talk, in one class, I'll talk about how I'm working with the CU Foundation and that they've given me all the data on past donations, and that I'm using it to create a model of which students we currently have are likely to give us lots of money in the future.
We really want to talk about that with advancement.
Okay, I didn't think this was realistic, but the students tend to believe me when I tell them this story. And then I come in a future class and I say, hey, I know you may have noticed that I put out name tents for you now. Some of them have green color, some of them are yellow color, some of them are red color. And the green color people are in the middle of the classroom, up where I look and walk all the way along the edge there. And then the reds are all the way out to the corner where I don't see them. And then I conduct a whole class where I only call on the green people. And keep in mind, this is a class with a participation grade. Okay? And first 2 times I did this, there was always 1 or 2 students, and this is like 15 years ago, keep in mind, who were furious at me that I was taking away their opportunity to learn and to earn a good grade. The last 2 times I've done it, not a single student has complained. And when I, at the very least, last few minutes of class, point out to them that I made all of this up, that there's no way the CU Foundation would give me all their data, they are kind of like, oh, we didn't see a problem with this. And it's a probability algorithm that would be incredibly incorrect, right? Inaccurate on average. And yet I'm going to give benefits to probably the people with rich parents, right? Or whatever it is that is making people give money. So I'm supremely worried about a lot of the ethics that we're not teaching, that they will never understand, that I'm only starting to understand. My wife will attest to this. I discovered TikTok, or Facebook's version of it, and it turns out that algorithm is incredibly good at hooking me. Like, I will sit for hours and watch Lauren jump with her jump rope. I don't know, I shouldn't be admitting that, but there's something that makes me want to get up and jump, right? So it's kind of scary.
Yeah, please.
So, I mean, there is one thing I should emphasize. So if you look at all the AI engines, all these machine learning trained, so let's see what are the main source for training them. It's existing data, right? So now, guess what? There is bias in existing data, right? So now they get amplified when you actually train a neural network. So let's say you would like to train a neural network for lending money to people. So now you use the data you already have, which is already biased, to train a neural network. It's an algorithm, which in real time, it tells you yes or no if you want to give money to someone, right? Or you might say for hiring as well. I mean, now many companies are using, AI to actually hand select candidates because there's a lot of candidates out there. So of course, to train them, you use existing data of the people who have been hired. So you already actually inject your own bias when you train your neural network. So we need to be careful, and there are already methods to be able to actually have a fair learning in the AI, right? For example, you say, look, there are two sets of data. If I feed them both to a neural network, they should give me the same output independently of the color skin, because that's one of the entry of the neural network, or independently of the age, right? They should generate the same output. So I think we need to be careful at how to train the neural network. We cannot just use them naively, because then the bias we already have in the existing data, they just simply get amplified. I just wanted to stress that.
We do have a question up here.
Oh, great.
Well, I figure we have 4 of CU's brightest, so I thought I'd give you a sort of something that needs some brainstorming with you up there and come up with some solutions from artistic ethics and other areas like that. So the question's coming from, we said earlier that AI won't be any more evil for a while than the people using it, which isn't very comforting. And so what I'm bringing up is there's currently a problem with older generations being, what I say, attacked is the wrong word, but found and looked for to try to siphon money out of their bank accounts and things like that. And everything from calling them up and saying, I'm your child, and the voice sounds like their child. And as they answer questions, the little AI changes the script. And then when they speak, they're speaking with that child's thing. Very hard for them to stop and figure out, how is this a real person trying to get my money and things like that. And I'll just give a little quickie example of, it's gone as far as, go to your bank, grab the cash out. I know this from specific people. Go to the bank, get your cash out, and they show up at the bank, and the bank says, oh, we've heard of this trick before. So are you on the phone right now with a scammer? And the scammer says to them before they go in the bank, tell them you're not on the phone with a scammer. And then they get the cash out, and then they drop it in a box that turns into Bitcoin and yada, yada, yada. So my question to you guys is, what artistic and creative solutions can you think of now or that you've already thought of to address problems like this?
Yes, I have something
Yeah,
to say.
please.
My mother-in-law just got scammed so badly, and I felt horrible. And it is real. It's happening all over the place. And one thing that my family and I have come up with is like a safe word, like a passcode, like a literally like we don't even say it out loud. We like write it down on a piece of paper, and we're like, if you're asked, this is what we say, so we know you're real. Something like that comes to mind.
Wow, that's a great example. I hadn't not heard of something like that as a solution. I want to ask one last question because it came through the chat, and I think it was a really good one, but I'm going to ask you all for like a short, snappy, like couple words, 1 or 2 sentence answer. What are things that students or anybody, not just students, people here tonight, people out in the world, what's your #1 recommendation for folks to do something, learn something to better understand and use AI?
I would say they should have a critical mindset. They should not accept any recommendation come out of ChatGPT, because as you know, with the picture of chicken or human, I mean, 99% that picture was not a human, right? Using AI. So I think we cannot just accept blindly any recommendation or anything that comes out of ChatGPT. We need to have a critical mindset. And we also have to be up to date regarding a state of the art in any AI literature, machine learning, all the techniques that comes. I mean, it's going to be very hard, but we have to understand, because the technology is moving very fast. I mean, as a scientist, it's also hard for me. And like every year, thousands and thousands of new publications are coming out, which are all amazing, right? So we have to be up to date regarding the technology around AI, and always critical mindset. Do not accept blindly everything that ChatGPT tells you. So that's my recommendation.
We'll go down the row.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I would move forward with great trepidation. You know, it takes a long time to build trust in these systems. And one of my fears is that, you know, memory is not as important as it once was. You can Google anything, it just serves a different purpose. But yeah, critical thinking is still important. And I fear that, you know, this will replace our brains, or, you know, this sort of sci-fi future. But yeah, that's really a concern. So move forward with caution.
To me, I think having a critical mindset to using these tools is really important. Back in the days when we had small language models, I used to do this test where I would put in the words God, Jesus, and Allah. And if I understand it right, Allah and God is essentially the same entity. But these tools would always come out and say God and Jesus are way more similar to each other than God and Allah. And it sort of displays a little bit of the Western bias that tends to exist in the training of all these things. Today, the thing I would challenge you to do is go to one of the image generation tools like Midjourney or ChatGPT's new built-in engine, right? And ask it to create a picture of a child playing in Iraq. Guess what happens? Out of 4 pictures, 2 or 3 of them will have guns in them. Because that's our bias and our thinking about Iraq. So be aware, this is our world picture that they are reflecting back at us.
But in that, so the critical mindset we should bring to AI is realizing that AI is in its infancy and is being taught by us. But that means that when I'm interacting with it having millions of teachers interacting with it at the same time, and trying to keep up with that. So I hope when we do this, we say, that was wrong, and here's why, and that we all take that as part of our pro-social mission, that when we see those I work in media studies, so we're constantly talking about media representations across culture and why certain things exist as they do in our culture. When AI does it, it's because we told it to. But it also puts on us the impetus and the responsibility to be agents to change that. If enough of us challenge those norms, then eventually those norms change. The problem that we live in a very complex society. Google was so great in 1998 when only academics could use it. And then 3 years later, the difference was so wild. This algorithmic bias is very much what we're also fighting in the midst of all this. But it will get better. It will get smarter, but it will only get better and smarter with our values if we're putting our values out into it regularly.
So I got critical thinking, be cautious, test it out, use it, and teach it, give it feedback.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I want to be mindful of the time. I think we're kind of right up at our ending point for the live event. So thank you so much. And on behalf of CU Boulder, thank you, Majid, Eileen, Kai, and Rick for joining us tonight and sharing your expertise and your experience. Everyone keep an eye out for the follow-up email. We'll follow up with a recording of the event as well as a list of resources. So if you want to learn more or become more engaged with the subject, we'll send information your way. And if you're here with us on campus, please stay. Enjoy the reception. There's some goodies and beverages outside. Talk to each other. And if you're joining us online, thank you so much. We're ending the event, but again, you'll have resources to continue learning. And we thank you for sharing your evening with us. I look forward to continuing the conversation with everyone and have a wonderful evening. Good night.